Welcome to Lord Johnlander, the Outlander podcast for Lord John fans, where we talk all things Outlander, but especially about Jaime and his Sassenach.
And sometimes we talk about Claire, too.
We can't promise you much, but for the next half hour-ish, we can promise chaos and to make you question whatever life choices led you to listen to us. Before we get into it, this is your one and only warning that show and book spoilers are lurking around every corner.
We're even going to spoil crap that never happened.
Hello, welcome to Lord Johnlander. We are your hosts, Mistress Pandora, but you can call me Pan.
And I'm Beth, otherwise known as JeSuisPrest.
So we are on episode 4 of season 1. What is this? The Gathering. That's what it's called. I think before we get into it, of course, as always, we have some corrections and clarifications. Last week, we couldn't figure out why wood garlic was so easy, or why it was so easy for Claire to identify that wood garlic is not wood garlic, it was lily of the valley. So I did a little Googling, and I found out that there's a slight difference to the leaves. So lily of the valley has 2 or 3 leaves on the same stem, and wood garlic only has 1, and wood garlic smells like garlic. And lily of the valley does not at all.
So it's interesting, and now I'm thinking about it even more. Did people use wood garlic in cooking, or was it just a coincidence?
I mean, it was just wild garlic. So here's the thing. When I Googled it, I Googled wood garlic, and wild garlic is all that came up. But there is a blog. I should have grabbed this. This link for it. But there was actually a blog dedicated to the plants of Outlander.
Oh,
it was like
interesting.
An Outlander botany blog. I should probably make a note to Google that again and maybe share it on Tumblr.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, I should do that. But yeah, so it's just wild garlic. So no surprise, there's a difference in the smell. But do these kids just not know what garlic smells like? I guess this kind of begs the question.
So the leaves are just like the top of the plant that sticks up from inside the ground.
Right. Yeah,
Oh,
the leaves smell like garlic. Apparently.
I actually had that growing in my, something similar anyways, growing in my like flower beds that when we bought our house, that they were like there. I was like digging up weeds, and I had these plants that I was like, oh, these are kind of cool looking. And then I was just digging up weeds. I'm like, all of a sudden I'm like pulling up, like, it was like either garlic or onions or something. And I'm like, what? It was all through the whole flower bed. And I was like, what the heck? What happened? But anyway,
so I digress. My yard is basically a meadow, and the front yard would not be green if it weren't for the clover, and the backyard would not be green if it weren't for the clover and the wild onions. So every time we mow the lawn in the summer, it smells like Italian food.
That's cool. I would like that.
It smells like, well, yeah, it's great, except it gets in my iris bed.
Oh, yeah. Well, plus when that smell gets on like your hands and stuff, like
it doesn't come off.
It sticks, yeah.
It does not come off. So there we go. That's the difference between wood garlic and lily of the valley. And if you know what garlic smells like, apparently it's not that hard to not get them confused. Oh, these poor children.
Well, it's funny because, Jamie's like, oh no, I hate wood garlic. But like, maybe he just like is smart enough to realize that stuff doesn't smell like regular garlic, so that's why he never tried it.
New theory. Jamie's a vampire.
Oh, I have a fic rec for that. We were just talking about fic recs, but if we're going to go down that path. Oh man, we'll save it. We'll save
that one for later. All right. So, episode 4, The Gathering. This is the one that has you know who as with a cameo.
You know. Oh, yeah. She who shall not be
Shall
named.
not be named.
I went totally blank for a second. Then I'm like, oh, yeah. Because I just tried to blank her out of existence when I
We're trying to
can't.
get sued.
No names. No names.
No names.
Oh, God.
There was a cameo. Yeah, there's a cameo in this one at the gathering. If you have a sharp eye, you'll recognize the individual. Anyway, so this episode starts. This episode starts with Claire running through the forest, being chased by a pack of wild children. Oh no, just kids from the castle. Never mind. And Angus and Rupert are struggling to keep up, it looks like.
You know what's funny? When I was thinking about this episode a little bit ago, when I was like trying to come up with like themes and stuff and connections and what have you, I was like, is there some sort of Lord of the Flies connection here? Because every time I think of like Boars, I think of Lord of the Flies. But it's kind of funny because now that you mentioned the kids chasing Claire in the beginning, I'm like, there's some connection there. There's got to be some. I used to teach 10th grade English, so I can't I can't turn that off in my mind.
That's fair. So they're remarking. There's these kids. Gotta love out of the mouths of babes. The children fill us in very organically by telling us that Claire has lost her fichu and her hair ribbon, and she didn't even notice because she was so concentrated on running away. But actually, she was just marking her path to escape. That's a lot of running.
She thinks she's got a really good plan.
It's not a bad plan.
No, it's not. I mean,
it's not the worst. She's had worst plans already, and we're only on episode 4. And she'll have worse plans again.
At least she wasn't trying to get to France.
Right. Yeah, Inverness is a little bit closer.
And it's nice too because you can kind of see her also. She's really does seem to be enjoying herself playing with the kids, and we know that, you know, from the first episode that having kids is something she's wanted. Mm-hmm. And she really does have a lot of fun with them, and she even, as she's, you know, starts with the gathering in full swing, as she starts kind of walking through, she even kind of has a twinge of like regret that she's leaving just because of all the merriment and all the fun she's been having and all the people that are so happy to see each other. So it's interesting.
Yeah, that was an interesting point that she makes via the voiceover as she's walking through the camp where everyone who's visiting the castle is staying. It reminds her of Victory Day celebrations after the war, which of course she spent that whole time with Daria. But it's
preparing to say goodbye.
Trying to convince Daria not to say goodbye, and Daria having the exact opposite. So sad. It really is. It is. But just the different kind of atmosphere, she kind of remarks on that. And that actually goes something I don't think I appreciated the first time I watched through this, but rewatching it again today, the 1940s music that overplays as she's walking through the castle and having flashbacks about Frank, which made me so weirdly emotional this time. And maybe it's because so maybe it's because our first episode of the podcast, I spent most of that time defending Frank's honor. But like, I don't know how this happened, but I'm turning into a Frank fan.
Ugh.
Oh, it's not that bad. Oh, come on. It's not that bad.
I mean, well, We'll see.
We'll see. We'll see.
We
can go on and on about the things that Frank does because he thinks it's the right thing to do. Moral compass parallels.
I have to admit that the other day I must have had you on my mind because I was thinking about Frank and kind of trying to come up with like some like mean things to say about him and stuff.
See how hard it is? Because he's nice, Beth. He's not a bad guy.
Look, I've got a lot of mean things, but for some reason my thoughts immediately went to bees. And yes, I know we're in season 1 and I'm going to start talking about book 9, but
we're
whatever.
Spoiling crap that happens and doesn't. Who cares? Let's just go for it.
It's our podcast. I can do what I want.
If you don't want to listen to it, turn it off.
But I was thinking about how there's still so much we don't know about Frank and his motives. Yes. And we do know a lot of the things that he did through Claire's eyes. And I think that some of them are definitely dick moves, but we'll dive into those at another time. But,
season 3.
you know, yeah, exactly. I'm ready. But, you know, he writes that book and, you know, Jamie's all, you know, angry at Frank for this book. But then the sachem, I don't even, am I saying that right? Sachem? When he talks to Claire about Frank, says that Frank is with her, but that he's also a lot of the times with Jamie. And it definitely made me think about, you know, and I remember when we were reading it, you know, at first, and me and my friends were just reading it and like reading it really fast and just kind of shooting off like, you know, commentary. And I think a couple of them were like, ew, why is he following Jamie? Leave him alone. But I'm like, I think he's trying to protect Jamie. And I think he's trying to protect Jamie for the sake of Claire. Yeah. And then that gave me way too much Frank sympathy. So I just pushed it down.
You buried it.
But I started to think about it again the other day. And it's like, I do think that we are going to see, hopefully, even more a Frank side of things as we go on.
You know, I am actually really looking forward. So I'm looking forward to season 3 primarily because that's where all of the best Lord John episodes are.
Yes.
But I am also looking forward to, because I've not rewatched the series before. So I've only seen it the one time, except for one episode I watched with a friend who was going through it the first time for moral support. That episode was Faith, by the way. So I picked, I've watched the one with all the bad things first, or twice. That was a great choice. Good job, Pan. But I am looking forward to rewatching the Frank stuff in season 3 through these new eyes, through having had a few years to kind of digest the series and develop more headcanon, get some more backstory on Frank, and to spend some more time like interpreting his character. I think it'll be really cool. We've not said one stupid joke thing yet. I would just like to point out that we're 13 and a half minutes into our recording and we have not said one stupid thing yet.
This is a very special episode of the Lord John Lander podcast.
You know what? Hey, can we take a break? Is John still in Aberdeen?
Yes.
Check. He hasn't left? Okay.
Yes. So if you remember, John is in Aberdeen and he has his friend Liam.
Hey, wait. Should we talk more? We haven't really talked a whole heck of a lot about why John is in Aberdeen.
I think this is a perfect time.
This is a really good time because there's not a whole heck of a lot that happens in this episode that we can turn into Lord John Lander. We'll figure it out. I have some ideas. So this is, if you have never read the Lord John series, I highly recommend it. It is absolutely spectacular. They're my
Yeah,
favorite of the books.
And so much, like, if you're like, well, I don't know why you'd be listening to this podcast if you're on the fence about John, but if somebody has happened to stumble upon this and they're like, I don't know about that guy, they add such great depth to his character, and you take that back with you into the show and into the book, the big books. And you can't, once you absorb that, you can't, you can't separate it again.
Yeah. You see everything a little bit differently after you have spent that much time in Lord John's head. Because
Absolutely.
the Lord John series is completely from his perspective, with the exception of the Scottish prisoners, switches back and forth between him and Jamie.
Yep.
We should do, oh my God, when we get through the series, like watching, we should do a Lord John like book club, because I can get 36 hours out of the Scottish prisoner just ranting about the same shit over and over again in different ways.
Absolutely.
We should do that. But not today, because we're still on season 1, episode 4. So stay tuned for a very long time. But okay, so at this point in the series, this is one thing that we have not actually made up. Lord John Grey is actually in Aberdeen right now. So about 2 years prior, his father apparently died by suicide. His father was the Duke of Pardlow. Don't Google Pardlow. It's a made-up title for the purpose of the books. It is not real. But his father, Gerard, right, was his first name, died by suicide, apparently. What you don't find out until later is that Lord John actually is going through the worst couple of years of his life right now, because it was his 12th birthday and he found the body.
Yeah.
And so his brother, Hal, who is 8 years older than him, so let's do it, 2022, something like that, assumes the position as head of the household, because their 2 half-brothers are already, they're not really around from their mother's first
and
marriage.
they have no connection to the title anyways.
They have no connection to the title. That's their half-brother by through their mother, Benedicta. But yeah, so Hal steps up as head of the household, and he ships John off to Aberdeen to stay with family, and Benedicta spends her time in mourning, also hiding in France, and Hal goes to London, and so John is all alone.
And interestingly, to add even more context to the story, Hal does not officially he can't refuse the title, but at this point, his father had 2 titles, and Hal chooses to go by the lower title of Lord Melton. Yeah. He does not want to be associated with his father, because prior to his father's death, he was accused of being a Jacobite sympathizer and plotting some Jacobite plot. I don't remember all the specifics, but and so Hal, in order to try to restore the family name, is really trying to distance himself from his father's name.
Until he can prove inconclusively that it wasn't the case and restore his honor post-mortem.
Correct. But poor John is in Aberdeen with relatives. He really does not like these relatives. He has a bit of a distaste for Lowland Scots, especially, right, during this time, and
Scots in general, but I mean that's the British thing.
Yeah.
that's the peerage talking.
Yeah. But he's going through turmoil because he found his father's body, but nobody knows he found his father's body. And I don't know, should we talk about the other things that he realized, or should we save that for a rainy day?
We can save that for a rainy day, because
Okay.
I know where you're going, and it's deep. There's so much more to it, and we could end up just, I mean,
Yeah.
we've already given our spoiler warning in the pre-recorded intro. But Brotherhood of the Blade would be our book recommendation for that.
Mm-hmm.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, so he's really, he just feels completely abandoned by his mother and his brother. Just completely abandoned. His father's dead, and he thinks in his mind, he's what did we say, 12?
14, well, yeah, 12.
14. 12, 14.
14
so
now,
yeah, somewhere.
but yeah. It's been a rough
Yeah.
couple of years for him. That's an early age to lose a kid. And then, like, can you imagine on your birthday?
Yeah.
An early age for a kid to lose their parent. I mean, that's on his birthday too. Like,
it's
and
just
at 12,
so traumatizing.
It really is. Poor John, and every shit sandwich that he has to choke down, he just chokes it down.
He does.
So I think okay, bear with me. I think I can tie this back to the episode. I think I can do it. Ready? So John is feeling like his family is not very loyal to each other. He's trying to be loyal to his brother, and he's trying to be loyal to his mother and his father's memory, but he doesn't feel the reciprocation there. And there's so much in this episode 1.04, The Gathering, that is about loyalty. See what I did there?
That was masterful.
Did I do good?
That was masterful. You did good. Yes. You did good.
That's a long stretch. I may have pulled something. But there's a lot of loyalty in this episode with the Mackenzies and all that good stuff. It's all about loyalty. Like, that's the whole point of this episode.
Absolutely. And it sets up those structures of loyalty, and really kind of gives a lot of exposition to help, ostensibly Claire understand what's going on, but it also helps, the viewer understand what the heck is going on, because most viewers going into the show blind, the only thing they know about clan loyalties and politics are from Brave, probably, and Braveheart.
Braveheart. Oh, no.
We won't go there.
We won't go there.
But yeah, so there's so many different loyalties, and Jamie is struggling with where his loyalties lie, not only to his own family, but between Colum and Dougal. And Claire's got this loyalty to Frank. She's trying to get back. So it's just a lot of kind of setting up all these relationships and obligations and things like that.
Yeah, even Galis, while she's insulting Claire in her surgery, she very clearly states it. A promise is a serious thing in this country.
Yeah, and I think it's true, and I think that it's kind of a double meaning there for Galis, because I think she in that moment she suspects that Claire is making an escape, because she's already kind of seen like all the food that Claire's been squirreling away and stuff like that. But so she's kind of trying to warn her, because Claire says, "Oh, I'll be there. I promise. I'll see you at the hall for the oath taking. I promise." So not only is Galis setting up this whole issue of loyalty, but she's also trying to warn Claire a bit, like, to watch her back.
Yeah, she really is. She continues to be creepy. I will say, though, that was a good dress on Galis this episode.
Yes, I did.
She's real extra. She really does. Like, that's before we get into the Bakra in a few seasons.
Oh, God.
Good Lord. But she's so just she really embraces this whole, sure, I'm a witch thing. She really does not shy away from it. How it works for her, I don't know, but it does. But you mentioned earlier, and I kind of want to circle around back to it, Jamie with his loyalties to
Yes.
Dougal and to Colum, it's interesting that loyalty to one is a betrayal of the other in this situation.
Right, because you'd think that it would be like, if he's loyal to the Mackenzie clan, that's good enough. But no, because there's multiple layers of reasons why this is not, there's this split, right? We already know that, like, you know, Colum is the head and the brains, and Dougal's the brawn. But, you know, joking aside, Dougal's the war chief, because Colum is unable to fulfill that. It's not usually a role that's split.
Right.
But Dougal wants to be the laird when Colum passes away, and Colum's probably not super long for this world, and everybody knows it. So there's, I mean, no matter, you know, kind of what your familial ties are, if you know your brother is just watching the clock waiting for you to die,
seriously,
there's gonna be some tension there.
No wonder they have weird arguments, right? They do have weird arguments later on.
There's so much subtext. There's so much that they're not saying every time they talk, and especially when they argue.
This would be a good point to point out that Gary Lewis, who plays Colum Mackenzie, and Graham McTavish, who plays Dougal, are phenomenal at this.
They're amazing.
They pass a lot between them very subtly. Like their body language acting is very good. I mean, that's their job. That's literally what they get paid big bucks to do. But they embody these characters very, very well. And I just wanted to take a moment to say they are very impressive. Also, Gary Lewis's lines with all of that Gaelic at the oath taking was also
I know.
very impressive. I like how, so I was watching this one on Netflix. Usually when I rewatch, it was on Stars, but I just happened to be, you know, in front of the TV today instead of at my computer. And it just says, the subtitles on Netflix just say speaking other language.
I love subtitles, but
which is true, but that was intentional because we were supposed to be as in the dark as Claire. They purposefully did not put the translation subtitles on these episodes because Claire doesn't know what they're saying, and neither should we, because the whole thing is from her point of view.
But one thing Claire learns when she has, I'm skipping around, but we can loop back. It's fine.
That's fine.
One thing that Claire learns from Myrta doing some translating for her, you know, is that we already know there's this conflict between Colum and Dougal wants to be the laird. Colum doesn't necessarily want Dougal to be the laird, and he has a son, but his son is young, so he's really looking to Jamie to be the laird, at least until Hamish comes to age. And I also think there's an element of him trying to protect Hamish too, because before Hamish comes of age, there's the whole issue of his paternity, and, you know, Dougal could possibly claim even stronger rights to, you know, the throne, if he came out with that information, the worst kept secret in Castle Leoch. But
it's just because Claire has eyes and no brain to mouth filter at all.
Well, I mean, in her defense, how could she know? You know, like, there's no
right.
She doesn't know any of them.
She's been there less than a day at that point. Oh yeah, we're just gonna spill all the clan secrets. Like, okay, so that's a target.
but Myrta, you know, explains to Claire that in Scotland they're Tannists, which means that they don't necessarily pass down like just through one line. It's kind of anybody who has Mackenzie blood, and can get the support of the men, could become the leader. And that's what Colin wants. And he's really kind of hoping to back Jamie into a corner at this one, and get Jamie to declare his fealty to the Mackenzie clan and to Colin. But that's got a whole other set of dangers too, because Dougal knows that Jamie would likely be more accepted than he would be to be the clan leader, which is interesting because we don't get a lot of information on that dynamic. But like, God, people must fucking hate Dougal because like
he just really loved Jamie.
Well, no, but I mean,
our
like,
fandom.
I mean, Jamie only was at Castle Leoch for like a year or so as a teenager. But Dougal's been around forever. And for the people to be like, yeah, I'm going to take my chance on the kid over this person that they've known and is an adult. And well, Jamie's an adult, but I mean, he's been the war chief. He has leadership experience. Like, people must really not like him in the Mackenzie clan.
I think this kind of maybe is this way off topic? I think this kind of it could relate to the kind of clan and family legends surrounding Jamie's parents, Brian and Ellen.
That's true too.
It really could. And also, okay, so and then in Colum's defense, if Jamie were to become the Mackenzie, that also brings in a portion of Fraserland.
Yeah, because I'm just going to go on this tangent because so Jamie's mother was obviously a Mackenzie. His father was a Fraser. He was the bastard son of old Simon the Old Fox.
Yep.
And when they weren't supposed to get married, Colum and Dougal forbid Ellen to marry Brian, but she eloped with him, and
they hold up until she got pregnant, and they had no choice but to acknowledge their marriage, which honestly
she is. I mean, yeah, because I think they waited even until she was like showing, right, to merge.
Talk about a fuck you.
So what the decision was, but then there was this whole thing of, well, we can't have them living on either Mackenzie land or Fraser land because that wouldn't be fair. So there's this freehold that they give them instead, which is Lallybroch. And that becomes in that way, they both gain a bit of independence from their families. And Colum definitely would like that land back, as we'll find out later, Jamie's grandfather. So whoever Jamie, gives loyalty to, that they're probably going to end up getting that land. And I mean, Lallybroch's great, but I've never really quite understood why it's so important to either of them to have it.
It's borderland. It's also Brockmorda. It's the village as well. True.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just, so there's just so many different.
There's so much going on. Like, this is really intricate power dynamic. It's a really intricate play between the clans and the families. It's really hard to wrap your head around the first time you watch it. Like, I don't think it made sense to me the first time.
No.
And I think it only makes sense to me now because I've read 9 books. 9 really chonky books.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just the power dynamics run so deep and go so far back that there's just kind of no way to untangle it. And you do get this sense a little bit that, kind of like you think about some of like the old Shakespeare plays where there was like fate and there's just like nothing, that could be done, or even, some like Greek tragedies where it was just like, this fate is going to bear out no matter what. And as the show goes on, you really start to see some how those old power dynamics continue to make problems for the main characters and play out.
It's a great source of additional conflict. It's really cool. So, wow, I think we left the episode way back there.
We have been so serious too tonight.
We've been so serious. Should I go pour a shot? Like,
maybe we should talk about Claire's attempted escape.
Sure, let's do that. So, actually, I do want to take a pause. There's some cute cattiness with Mrs. Fitz and Iona McTavish.
It's kind of silly, but it is cute. A little bit of a break because the episode's pretty serious too.
The episode's really serious, and I actually laughed really inappropriately at this. But there is a cameo, and this character, lovely lady named Iona, gives Mrs. Fitz kind of a backhanded compliment about making the castle look so nice for the party. And Mrs. Fitz says it's a lovely dress. So glad to see it again. Because it was so nice at the last gathering.
Which was like, what?
20 years ago.
20 years ago or something.
Yeah.
Oh, those silly women folk.
It was kind of it was a cute little diversion into some Mrs. Fitz characterization. Some of that spitfire that we got when she threw that dick Father Bane out of her sister's house in the last episode.
Yeah.
That was a nice little treat. So,
one of the saddest things is that Mrs. Fitz is such a gem, and just like she's only there for such a short time that you just never hear from her again.
Well, see, now we need, is there Mrs. Fitz fan fiction? I really doubt it.
She tends to be a character in a lot of modern AU stuff.
Yeah, that's
where she's like the neighbor, or like, the babysitter and stuff like that. So she lives on.
That's true. She does. Give her that credit. So Claire thinks that she's going to have an easier time. Okay, so pause. Claire's strategy to get out from under Angus and Rupert is get them drunk and get them in bed with somebody else.
That's the first part of the plan.
That's part one. It's just not a bad. I mean, honestly, she knows her audience. It's not bad. So she's trying to. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, so she's trying to sneak out. We have a moment of Claire playing wingman for Lyra again.
Yes. When so Lyra, ridiculous.
This is so Lyra meets her as she's trying to flee. Scares the bejesus out of Claire. She's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, mistress." So Lyra asks her for a love potion for Jamie. For her to use on Jamie. And so she goes to get dried horse shit and says Jamie will never know the difference. Now, I need to know, did she mean Jamie will not be able to tell the difference between Lyra and horse shit, or himself and horse shit? I need to know.
I think she was probably just commenting that Jamie wouldn't notice any difference in smell. Because
He's always around horse shit.
He's in horse shit all the time, but it is pretty funny to think of that.
I think there's a line.
And then she tells her to click her heels together and say, "There's no place like love. There's no place like love."
Which sounded really profound and poetic to Lyra, and she was really impressed in the moment. But the rest of us are like, "That's the Wizard of Oz, bitch.
That's lame, Claire." I was going to say, too, that not only does she try to get Angus and Rupert to hook up with some women to get them off of her back, but she also she puts a ton of valerian root in the wine she gives him.
She drugs the shit out of Angus.
Galus was like, see it or mix it into something and was like, "That's a lot." Like, that's enough to fell the whole army.
Oh, good. Well, one pain in the ass.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So she's on her way out, though. She runs into some handsy assholes again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a couple clansmen. She's got to fight them off, and then Dougal shows up. So right.
That's like out of the frying pan and into the fire, though, because then he starts getting handsy. But
this is where we discover Dougal's highly inappropriate feelings for Claire. "I'd like to grind her corn."
Gross.
I don't know why that's so funny to me, but it makes me laugh every time.
It's the worst euphemism ever. Ever. There, he could have said literally anything else, and it would have been better.
"You're the most singular woman, Claire."
Anywho, so she beats the shit out of his head with a chair. She goes WWE on his ass. Which was entertaining.
It was very entertaining and impressive. Luckily, he was... No, and I think Jamie even says that to her later, that, like, he might not remember.
He's laughing when she told him what happened. He was so proud of her. It's funny. The stuff that Claire does is like, that makes Jamie so proud, is the stuff that's really kind of stupid, but is honestly not very ladylike in the slightest. But he gets so proud when she gets violent.
Oh yeah, he loves it. He's just like, "That's my woman. That's my woman." Well, it's funny because, you know, in the second episode, when she scares the horse and Jamie says, "Oh, she's just a lass with spirit," that's not a bad thing. And you're like, well, Jamie has a type.
He has a type.
But honest to God, like, let's be real here. Jamie just thinks that, like, Claire farts sunshine and rainbows. And, I
think that was actually in the books at some point. I do believe that was wasn't that an exact quote? That sounds like an exact quote.
I don't know.
Here we go. We found it again.
But it is, I do find it endearing the way he just, everything she does just makes him more enamored of her.
Oh my God.
She's like, "I beat your uncle over the head with a chair." And he's like, "I love you."
Hard eyes again. Does this bring us to our weekly Jamie Fraser erection scale?
Yes, it does.
So let's set this. So are we doing that she tripped over him and then, like, boing, or are we doing your uncle's unconscious because I beat the fuck out of him?
We're going with the tripping over, because remember, she falls. She's trying to get to the horse that she's picked for her getaway. And what she doesn't realize is that Jamie is hiding in the stables because he doesn't want to have to deal with his uncles trying to do things that will get him killed. So she trips over him and she falls right on top of him, and then he rolls over really quick and gets his knife out. And then he realizes it's her. So that moment there.
That Jesus H. Roosevelt Christ, no Sassenach, just me. That moment.
Yes.
Okay, see, you just up the hotness. So for our listeners, and for you, because you can't see what I'm doing, I'm going through my rating scale because I have an Excel spreadsheet. That's what I do. That ups the hotness a little bit. I think just a tiny bit. Okay. All right. What do you, out of 1 to 5 penises, what is your rating for this episode's Jamie Fraser erection scale?
I think the second he realized it was her, immediate 4. Immediate 4.
Immediate 4.
I mean, he's like laying on top of her. Just immediate 4.
I've got to get. All right. So I have. It's the Dirk is what drives it up. So I'm going with, if I'm rounding up to the if I'm rounding to the nearest half penis, because my formula tells me it's 2.8, so I guess it's a 3.
That's the farthest off we've been.
That is the farthest off we've been. Well, like, okay, so I have the five axis metric thing, whatever. So timing and appropriateness is kind of low on this one.
Yeah.
Hotness because of the Dirk. I gotta bump that up a little bit. Stamina because she kicked him. He gets a little extra credit for that. It is just funny. So comedic value. So yeah, it comes out to be a 2.8. We'll round that up to 3 penises. You continue to rate Jamie Fraser's erections higher than I do.
Well, I think part of it is just like until the wedding, until they actually have sex and he gets some of that out of his system, it's just going to be, I just picture him like kind of like, an adolescent who's just constantly, dealing with that. Yeah.
We're going to have to, at some point, we need to have a "that's what John said" moment.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of "that's what she said," that's what John said.
I love it. We're incorporating new features.
This is great. Yeah. We're building this on the fly as we go. Okay.
So basically, because Claire was trying to run away, and Jamie, and she tripped over Jamie. It's kind of lucky that she did, because he explains to her that there's guards all around the perimeter, and she would not get very far.
Well, she's not going to.
No. So, but so she kind of, she gets, this is the first time they have a little bit of a fight there too, because she's frustrated about it, and he calls her Sassenach, and she's like, is that all I am to you, just a Sassenach? And, Jamie's like, whoa, I did not mean it that way.
Chill, lady.
Sis. But anyway, so he's got to walk her back to the castle now, which puts him, closer to the danger.
He doesn't have to, but he does.
He does, because it's Claire and he loves her. And
Claire. And
she's got rainbows shooting out of her ass. I mean, it's just, it's a whole thing. But then on the way, they get caught by a couple of Mackenzie men, right? And so Jamie's trying to just like sneak her closer and then get back to the stable, but they get caught. So Jamie gets he gets bonked over the head by Rupert first, and then
that's so rude. Why? Is this how they say hello?
Yes. It's a secret Highlander handshake. But yeah, and then so now Jamie is going to be forced to make a decision about his oath and whether he's going to take the oath. And pretty much either way, whatever he does, he predicts he will be killed.
Yeah, it sucks one way or the other. Either Dougal's going to kill him or Colum's going to kill him. And so he's got to come up with he's got two bad options. He's got to come up with a third, less bad option. So he kind of
Jamie Fraser, and that's what he does.
That's what he does. So we talked last week about how Jamie really has his own sense of moral code when we were talking about the pragmatic relationship he has with his faith, and how it's very similar to the way he feels about the law and everything. Like he has his own set of morals. He has his own moral compass. It may not always point due north, but he's confident in it. And right. He's willing to draw the line in the sand and say, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm not going to do. And damn the consequences. So he has to come up with this third, less crappy, but still bad option, which is to kind of, sort of swear an oath, but not really, to Colum without actually swearing fealty to Colum. So he's swearing some loyalty, but not like making himself a Mackenzie in the process, which is a very, very, very genius plan on his part.
It's almost like an oath of allyship.
Yeah. Which, weirdly enough, worked for Colum. Like, he was okay, like, okay, good enough for me. That's fine.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, because I was going to go off on a tangent.
Okay. One thing I was going to say, in the conversation that Myrta has with Claire, because, after Jamie gets dragged into the hall, she follows, of course. And she's like, I don't understand what the big deal is. So Myrta kind of, lays that out for her, what we just talked about, Dougal and Colum, and they're going to kill him and stuff. And Claire's like, oh, then it's my fault that he's in this position now, because if she hadn't tried to run away, she wouldn't have tripped over Jamie and he would have just slept in the stables all night. And Myrta's like, yeah, it is. And I think that's the first time since Claire has arrived in the 18th century that she has a realization that these are real people and the things that she is doing have real consequences for them, and those consequences matter. I think even though she's been scared and out of place and stuff, like, I feel like it's been like not a fun game, but a game, right? Like, she's stuck somewhere and she's got to get out and go away. And these people are all just kind of like players in this game. And I think for the first time, the reality hits her that, wait, these are real people. Like, it's not just some time travel fantasy for them, like these things. And, which is, it took her a little while to get to that level of self-awareness there, but I think it really does. I think it really does affect her actions moving forward in the next several episodes. When she's still trying, when she's still, she's still Claire, but, but she does sort of, well, I'll save this for the next episode. What else I was going to say, but yeah, so she is starting to feel the reality of what's going on, and that, she could actually impact these people's lives.
Yeah, I think I see where you're going. I have thoughts that can go another way. So the tangent that I was going to go on, I just wanted to I want to tease this because it's going to come up later. Jamie's oath, not oath to Colum and it being good enough for Colum. I think Colum is smart enough to appreciate the position that Jaime's in. He's not dumb. He knows the danger that Jaime would be in if he swore fealty just outright. He knows the danger that Jaime would be in from Dougal. And I think it serves Colum's purposes for Jaime and Dougal to not be that adversarial. There's always they're going to be adversarial. That's just their destiny, right? That's just their relationship. But it serves Colum's purposes better for him to have both Jaime and Dougal in his pocket.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's more that power and control that his uncles have over him that comes up and shows itself in really, really ugly ways. And I think when we get around to the Shinty episode, I think we can put a pin in this and we can come back to it when we get, not the Shinty episode, the Shinty scene.
Yes.
Because we'll get there. We've really gone off on so many tangents and none of them were funny.
You were worried we wouldn't have enough to fill an episode.
I was. But look at that. It's, it's only half an hour. I need to remember how long half an hour really is. Because it flies by.
So anyway, all is well. After Jaime takes his oath, not oath. And then, although Claire is kind of stuck again, but the next day she goes on the hunt with a boar hunt with Dougal and a bunch of the Mackenzie men. One of them, whose name is Geordie, but he's not we just learned his name and then he dies.
But take it away.
But he gets run through by the boar, and Claire and Dougal see to him. And there's this moment where Dougal where they both realize that it's not going to help him, Geordie, to patch up his leg because his guts are kind of
literally hanging out, literally spilling out.
So he and Claire both start just to talk to him, to try to just ease his passing, really.
Give him comfort, give him a good death.
Yeah, Dougal kind of jokes with him about his sister.
I don't think that was a joke. I think Dougal really did bang his sister.
No, I know it wasn't a joke, but they laugh about it, But and then Claire, asks him about his home and really helps him go to a place of peace as he's dying. And I think Claire and Dougal both kind of find a small respect for each other in that moment.
They do, but then of course Dougal is Dougal, and he finds a way to be a suspicious bastard about it, and he's confronts her in the surgery, like, you've seen men die by violence before. Yeah, a lot of them, which is kind of threatening, but also not coming from her.
Yeah.
So it's like she keeps trying to endear herself to these people, and she's not doing a bad job, but then Dougal is just he can't get past. He doesn't trust her. He just can't get past it, which is fair.
Which is a continuing theme, throughout the season. She'll make some gains with his trust, and then he just falls back, So, and at some point, she just decides she just doesn't give a shit anymore. But
shortly after she realizes she's married to Jaime, and it's fine.
And, it's funny because, and I know we don't want to think about Dougal grinding Claire's corn, but, it has to be interesting to be in Dougal's head because he, in one sense, I think he's very taken with Claire. And I don't think it's just her looks. I think he really is taken with her abilities and her spirit and, and all of that. But then he can't trust her.
Yeah, he can't trust her, but she's very competent in a lot of strange ways. Strange for her being a woman in the time.
Which also, his mistress is like that too in a lot of ways. Although she's meeker, she kind of tries to act like she's a little meeker and blend
she
in
acts
a little
like
more.
She's a little meeker.
Yeah. He's drawn to Galus too. And he does, I think, the books go into it a little more deeply. I think Dougal's got a lot of disdain for women in general. But that's an understatement. But he's just got this sort of attraction for a certain type of woman, and but then at the same time he can't bring himself to truly respect them or not even be suspicious of them.
Yeah, Dougal and Galus is a match made in hell. It's not like they're perfect for each other. They deserve each other.
It really is.
They really truly deserve each other. But it is a match made in hell. And I don't mean like purgatory. I don't mean limbo. I mean like the lowest circle of hell.
The fires.
The fiery pit. That's spat them out. God, we're going to have to go into that later. So they get back from the hunt, and Jamie is playing shinty. And I had this thought as I was rewatching this. Dougal picks up a stick. I'm sure it has a name. I don't know what it is. But Dougal picks up a stick to join this game of shinty, and he just starts beating the frick out of everybody, especially Jamie. Like this is just an excuse for Jamie to be his punching bag.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
It's absolutely all it is. So this is one of those, this is a prime example. You could say he's frustrated with Jamie because of the oath taking and stuff. He can't make a move, he can't make an overt move against Jamie because of the way Jamie handled the oath situation. But at the same time, in Dougal's mind, Jamie is his property in a way. He treats him Dougal very much treats Jamie like his property. And he's just going to take out all of his frustrations between that and between Geordie dying on the boar hunt and all of this stuff. And he's just going to beat the hell out of Jamie. And then Jamie's going to beat him in shinty. And that makes it all better, right? Right? It's all better. You're fine now.
So, they're just kind of beating the shit out of each other as men do, But the thing that struck me when I was rewatching this, and I've seen this episode a bunch of times, so I think because I was looking for themes and things like that to talk about, I realized how much the shinty fight between Dougal and Jamie, how a lot of it mirrors their last fight in episode 213.
It really does.
And even that one, what was the most striking was that one part where their sticks are both up and they're crossed and they're just kind of locked like that. And not only does that kind of symbolize their whole relationship, but you see some of that playing out in episode 213, in the flipping of the power back and forth, and Jamie eventually besting him. So I just had never noticed that before, and I was like, wow, this is big foreshadowing.
What made me think, or what this made me think of, that it made me think of that their final battle in season 2, but it also made me think, I'm always struck about how different Jamie's relationship with John will be from all of the other relationships he has with men of any level of power in his life.
It's true.
Everyone wants something from Jaime. Everyone wants to use Jaime for something, except for Lord John. I just feel like
John actually refuses to use Jaime when given the opportunity.
Refuses, and when he has no choice, he hates it. It eats him up. He can't stand it. He's like the one person who actually had some sort of legally binding control over Jaime's autonomy and never abused it, ever. And Jaime just doesn't know what to do with it.
It's true. I mean, if you think about it, when Jaime, and this is for show watchers, if you haven't read the book, in the show, they showed that whole thing with the little piece of tartan. All of that on the show kind of happened under Harry Quarry, but that really happened in the book when John was there, and Jaime is just kind of so angry and confused and doesn't know what to do with John, that he takes the blame for a piece of tartan that's found and basically forces John to whip him. John has like no choice. He's got to uphold the rules, and he has too much honor to just make somebody else do it. And for a long time, that severs their ties. And I think, I think you're right. Part of that is just because Jaime just cannot handle this man who, yes, John had a momentary lapse of reason when he reached out for Jaime's hand, but other than that, he's not asking anything of Jaime. And he wasn't really in that moment. He wasn't in that moment. No.
It was an offer, not a request.
Yeah. So it's so hard for Jaime. Yeah, it's so hard for Jaime to accept somebody like John that he tries to sever ties with him completely. And he spends the first several years of his at Hellwater moping around and being mad at John.
We hug them both. Like, they both need hugs. Like, there's a list of characters who just need hugs. Like, it's okay. You're allowed. It's okay, Jaime. You're allowed to be attracted to men. It's okay. Especially John. He's a good one. There's a word for it. It's okay.
Ever since his father died, he has not had any men in his life, really, or very few, like you said, that haven't wanted to use him for a purpose.
Exactly.
And even when his father was still alive, he was dealing with a Dougal, because when he fostered with Dougal, and this freaking shit with the Duke of Sandringham, and
talking about that.
Oh, I know.
Fun. I hate his fucking guts.
I mean, but that's like a common theme, though. Is like everybody kind of wants a piece of Jaime, right? And not in the
sexy way.
No. Well,
way.
Some
few,
of them.
But it's
which also is part of Jaime's total and utter confusion in his mind that makes him want to sever those ties with John, because at least two men in his life that wanted to take advantage of him and did, one of them, it kind of gets tied up with all these other men that have taken advantage of him in other ways. And it gets this but then there's like this, element of these Sandringham and Blackjack Randall, who want to use him for his body. And I think all of that bad stuff gets mixed up, which is a huge part of why Jamie doesn't know what to do with John.
He absolutely doesn't. And John is he just wants to help. Like, he just wants to do the right thing. He wants to do the kind thing. He wants to do the honorable thing. Yeah. So there's a bit from, if we can bounce back to Aberdeen, just because the boar kind of reminded me about this note that you made about John's time in Aberdeen with Liam, when Liam was he said he was going to run away and got attacked by, was it a badger that got him?
A badger. Yeah. So Liam told John that he was running away from home, and Liam, he's a bit of a goofy kid. Kind of not too
hasn't grown into his arms yet.
Yeah, not too worldly, and John, he's processing all this trauma, and he's got this one friend that's like, his only anchor in life right now. And he's so worried about him that he makes a plan and he follows Liam. Good thing he did, because Liam gets attacked by a badger. And when he's in the woods running away, and John saves his life. He has his knife with him, and he jumps in, kills the badger, and gets Liam home. And on the way back, they sort of talk about, the things that are bothering Liam about his home life. And we don't need to get into that today. We've already had a lot of heavy conversations.
So much heavy conversation.
But this is the point where I think both John and Liam start to realize that there's more between them than just friendship, because of, how worried John was for him, and how safe Liam feels with John.
Young love. So sweet. I like any story where Scott. I like that John in this point he gets that unique opportunity to learn things about himself that I think a lot of young people in that time just did not have that opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, despite him kind of hating Aberdeen, he certainly did have a lot of time to just, reflect.
Yeah.
And one other thing I was going to say about John too, because we talked about, how Jamie doesn't quite know what to do with John. But I was just reading Lord John and the Haunted Soldier, and in that novella, John writes letters to Jamie that he never sends, but it's kind of like a journaling. And in the last letter he writes to Jamie, he says that Jamie and Neil the cunt, he doesn't, are the only two people that know what John is, but won't say anything. And he says that with both of them, he feels that he is completely himself, with like no masks, no pretenses. He's just, with those two, he is just John. And, it makes you think about just the loneliness in his life. I mean, he's surrounded by family. He loves his family.
But he can't be himself with his family.
But yeah, he's always wearing a mask, and he's always pretending. And I mean, there's always that almost like a hole in his life that, you know, he's got a deep sense of loneliness, that when he's with Jamie, when he's writing Jamie letters, you know, he feels so free. And, you know, eventually after The Scottish Prisoner, when he and Jamie
freaking
married and stop hating each other, you know, once they hit that point in their relationship, their friendship is so precious to John, you know, because of that. Because who wants to be friends with Neil
he married
the
his
cunt?
best friend, isn't? I know it must be. The cunt is literally in his name. I mean, it's not like on his driver's license or anything.
It makes me think of like McLovin.
I could not let it stay this serious. I'm sorry. I couldn't let it end on this. But he's lucky. He does. It takes a while. Like he doesn't. It takes him a while to get there. It takes him a while to get there, of course. But you know, John, in the end, does get to marry his best friend, and I'm not talking about Isabel.
Thank you, Hal.
Oh, damn it. We don't have time for me to go there right now. Son of a bitch.
Well, that's all we have for you tonight.
God damn it. Do we have a fic rec or something?
Oh, yes, we do. So, our fic rec tonight is the story On Our Lips Begin and Tell, by JRC10 on AO3, and it's part of a larger series of stories called the Baziamile.
Yeah.
I don't even saying that right, but series, and it can stand alone, or you can read it as part of the series. So if you want to just go read it as a standalone, you can. But it's got we chose it because it's got a lot of these Dougal, Colum, Jamie dynamics in it, and it's sort of a retelling of the first season of Outlander, but under like different circumstances. Frank is dead. So when Claire goes through the stones, she has no ties at home, and Jamie has been pardoned, so he gets to go take his place as the Laird of Lallybroch, and Claire is rescued at the stones by Dougal and taken to Castle Leoch before she meets Jamie. So she gets caught up in Colum and Dougal's power dynamics as well. And, you know, you see these power dynamics, especially with between Dougal and Jamie, play out throughout the story.
Yeah, so we'll that will be linked on our Tumblr. I have not had the fortune of reading this one. It is 6 figures. It's 101,000 words and some change. I have read some other JRC10 though. She's a fantastic writer. So that's a good, just a little light reading if you just feel like a little bedtime story. You know,
100K words, just
no
a little,
deal.
you know, quick read.
No big deal. So this was super deep. I'm going to come up with some awful things to say about Hal for next episode that have very little to do with the episode at all. But I'm going to get an FU Hal in because I'm kind of pissed that we're leaving off on yay Hal. Damn it. Bastard.
Look, I've got a little Mackenzie blood in me too, okay? All right.
Well, this was fun. This is a good half hour.
Yes. Yes. We love these half-hour episodes.
Well, if you haven't fallen asleep, make sure that you subscribe or follow wherever you prefer to find your podcast, and we will talk at you next week. Bye.
Bye. This podcast is not affiliated with Outlander, Sony, Starz, and definitely 100% not with Diana Gabaldon. All opinions expressed are our own, and we may not even believe them ourselves. In fact, nothing in this podcast should be taken seriously as a general rule. We may not even be real people. Does this podcast even exist?
This podcast is not suitable for children, immature adults, homophobes, anyone who takes fandom too seriously, people who don't understand that the characters aren't real, people with sticks up their ass, people who hate fun, and people who have no sense of humor. Do not try any of these hot takes at home. We are professionals.
The FDA has not approved this podcast for human consumption. Side effects may include nausea, vomiting, the urge to send us anonymous homophobic hate, ringing in your ears, and constipation. If you experience any of these side effects, ask your doctor if dying mad about it is right for you.
If you know us in real life, no, you don't.